What does a woman do when the man she trusted breaks her heart in front of the whole town, and the only person who seems to notice is a stranger with tired eyes and a gentle voice? The spring social in Copper Creek, Colorado was supposed to be a night for laughter. Lanterns swung from posts around the square. A fiddle played bright tunes. Boots scuffed the packed dirt while skirts spun in the warm wind. But on the edge of the makeshift dance floor, Violet and Inslee stood still, like the world had tipped sideways. Tears ran down her cheeks, leaving dark spots on her blue calico dress. She did not bother to hide them. There was no point. Everyone had already seen what happened. Gerald Whitman had just announced his engagement to Penelope Davis. He did it loud and proud, right there under the lantern light, with his arm around Penelope's waist, and the town gathered close. Violet had been courting Gerald for nearly a year. Only last Sunday he swore he would speak with her father this week. Now he smiled at another woman, while Violet felt every promise dissolve like dust in rain. A coyote cried somewhere beyond town, long and lonely, and Violet felt like that sound was made for her. The folks of Copper Creek kept dancing. Some looked away, some whispered behind their hands. Nobody approached Violet. Not after 3 failed courtships and too many rumors about her temper. She was the daughter of Charles and Inslee, owner of the largest spread in the valley, and men had come sniffing around that land for years. But when Violet refused to be soft or small, they drifted off. Tonight, after Gerald's public choice, the town acted like watching her cry was enough of a spectacle. Across the square, Colton Chase noticed her. He had ridden into Copper Creek 3 days ago, looking for work after 2 long years driving cattle north from Texas. He was 30, broad in the shoulders, sun-browned, with a Stetson worn thin at the brim. He had the look of a man who had slept more nights under open sky than under a roof. He meant to keep his head down, take what work he could, and maybe stop drifting for once. But the sight of Violet, standing alone in tears while the town pretended not to see, pulled him forward before he could talk himself out of it. Tom Barlow, the livery owner who had hired Colton for odd jobs, muttered beside him, "Poor and Inslee girl. 3rd time she's been jilted. Her pa's land is prime, but that temper scares men off faster than a rattler in a bedroll." Colton did not answer. He kept watching Violet, how she held her chin up even while crying. Pride and hurt wrapped together in one small, stubborn frame. He found himself walking through the crowd. Violet felt someone coming close and stiffened, expecting pity or mockery. Instead, she looked up into unfamiliar blue eyes that carried no glee, only concern. The man stopped a polite distance away. "Ma'am," he said, voice low and steady. "Seems to me, a lady like yourself deserves better than to cry alone at a celebration." He held out a clean handkerchief. It was such a simple thing, but it cracked something open inside her. "I don't know you?" Violet managed, pressing the cloth to her face. "Colton Chase," he said. "New to town." She swallowed. "Violet Inslee." "Figured as much," he said with a small smile. "Copper Creek talks fast." Her shoulders tightened. "If you're here to court me for my father's land, you best join the line of disappointed suitors. I am no man's path to fortune." To her surprise, he laughed, soft and real. "Miss Inslee, I've spent 12 years sleeping on the ground with a saddle for a pillow. I've got no designs on anyone's land but my own someday. I just couldn't stand by and watch a lady suffer." The words were plain. No fancy speeches, no oily charm. That, more than anything, made Violet's anger falter. The town knew every rough edge of her story. This man didn't. He was a stranger, untouched by gossip. "He promised me," she blurted, hate and shame tangling in her throat. "Promised he would speak to my father this week." Colton nodded once. "Then he's a fool and you're better off." "That's easy to say when you're not the one folks will whisper about for months," she snapped. "They think I don't hear them. Poor Violet can't keep a bow to save her life." Colton looked past her toward the dance floor where Gerald spun Penelope around, both of them laughing. Then he faced Violet again. "Would you care to dance?" She stared. "What?" "Dance with me," he said, holding out his hand. "Right now. Give them something else to talk about. I couldn't. You can, he said, not harsh, just sure, unless you'd rather let that man ruin your whole night. A hard little knot formed in Violet's chest. She was tired of being the quiet ending to men's stories, tired of being the lesson town girls whispered about. She lifted her hand. All right, Mr. Chase, but I warn you, I'm not feeling graceful. That makes two of us, he said with a grin. I've danced more with campfire shadows than real women. On the dance floor, eyes followed them like rifle sights. Violet felt the whispers prickle her skin, but Colton's hand at her waist was steady, respectful. He didn't pull her too close. He didn't show her off. He simply danced like it mattered that she was there. The music carried them in a slow waltz. For the first time that night, Violet breathed, without choking on shame. Where are you from? She asked, needing something to do with her voice. Virginia, he said. Left when I was 18, after the war. Been moving west since. Something shuddered behind his eyes, gone as quick as it came. And why Copper Creek? Heard there was work. Thought maybe it was time to stop riding in circles. The song ended. Colton did not let go of her hand right away. Miss Inslee, would you allow me to escort you home tonight? Violet blinked. My father's wagon is... I think he left early. Said his back was troubling him. Colton nodded toward the road. I've got a horse. It's not far. Her cheeks warmed. It's improper. It's safe, he answered. Unless you'd prefer to ask one of the gentlemen who watched you cry all evening. She looked around. The men who once laughed at her jokes and swore up and down they admired her spirit were suddenly busy elsewhere. Gerald had the family wagon. Asking him would be like swallowing fire. Fine, she said, but we leave now. Colton brought her to his sorrel gelding. He helped her up, then swung behind her. His arms reached around to take the reins, and Violet went stiff with the closeness of him. The horse stepped into a steady trot. Behind them, the lanterns of town blurred to gold specks. They rode in silence, the night air cool and clean. Stars came out sharp over the dark outlines of pine and scrub. Somewhere in the brush, something moved. The horse shied hard. Violet slipped sideways with a gasp, and Colton's arms snapped around her waist, steel strong, holding her against him. Easy, he murmured, to the horse, to her, to both. You all right? Yes, she whispered, though her heart pounded for more reasons than the scare. They reached the Inslee gate. The ranch house stood ahead, one lamp burning like a watchful eye. Colton helped her down, hands careful at her waist. For a breath they stood too close, the faint smell of leather and smoke clinging to him. Then the front door opened. Charles and Inslee filled the porch with his big, stooped frame and sharp gaze. "Violet," he called. "That you?" "Yes, Father," she said, lifting her chin. "I've brought a guest." Colton removed his hat. "Mr. Inslee, Colton Chase. I hope you'll pardon the hour. I escorted your daughter home when I noticed you'd left the social early." Charles's eyes flicked to Violet's reddened face. His jaw tightened, understanding, dawning. "Come in," he said. Inside, the warm house smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Violet poured 3 cups with hands that shook just a little. Charles questioned Colton about his work, his history, where he came from. Colton answered straight, like a man who didn't know how to lie, even if he tried. When Charles mentioned being short-handed, Violet thought he was only talking. Then her father offered Colton a trial month on the ranch, $7 a week, room, board. Violet stared at him. Her father did not hire strangers. Not like this. Colton looked just as surprised, but he nodded. "I'd be honored, sir. On my merits, not for any other reason." Quote. Charles gave a grunt that might have been a chuckle. "If I hired every man who showed interest in Violet, I'd be running the biggest crew in 3 territories. Go on now. Foreman's cabin is empty. You can sleep there tonight." Later, Violet led Colton across the yard to the small cabin. She lit the lamp, checked the kindling, then turned to leave. Something in her chest felt too full. "Why did you help me tonight?" she asked suddenly. "You didn't know me." Colton watched her a long moment. "I've been alone a long time," he said. I know what it looks like when someone thinks they've got to carry pain by themselves. Didn't seem right to leave you there." The words settled over her like a blanket. She swallowed hard. "Thank you." "Violet," he said softly as she reached the door. "Any man who humiliates you like that doesn't deserve another thought." Her throat tightened. She could not answer. She only nodded, then stepped into the night. As she walked back to the house, her mind kept turning. A stranger had seen her when her own town looked away. Her father had trusted that stranger faster than made sense. And Violet could not stop thinking about the strength of his arm around her, the gentleness in his voice. Behind her, in the dark, the foreman's cabin door closed. Violet told herself this was nothing, just a rough day, a kind man, a moment that would fade by morning. But somewhere deep inside, she felt the opposite. And she had no idea that before the sun set again, Gerald Whitman would knock on her door with poison in his mouth and a warning that could change everything. Violet woke before dawn, her mind tangled with thoughts she could not quite name. She moved through the kitchen preparing biscuits as she always did, yet her hands trembled every time she remembered Colton's arm tightening around her on the ride home, or the way he'd spoken to her father so respectfully, as if she mattered, not as land, not as gossip fuel, but as a person. When she entered the dining room with a tray of fresh biscuits, she froze. Colton Chase was already seated with her father, both men drinking coffee like old friends. In the clear morning light, Colton looked different somehow. Cleaner, sharper, steadier. The soft glow of lanterns last night had made him look mysterious. The bright morning gave him shape and strength. He stood when she walked in. "Morning, Miss Inslee." She hid her smile. Last night, she had been Violet. This morning, with her father watching, they had both stepped back into proper distance. Her father nodded at the biscuits. "Your cooking is the one thing that keeps all my men in line." Colton took a biscuit. "Best I've had in a long while, sir." Their eyes met briefly, and Violet felt warmth creep into her cheeks. After breakfast, the men rode out to check the north pasture. Violet started her chores, trying to focus on her work, but her thoughts kept circling back to the stranger in the foreman's cabin. By mid-morning, she was angry at herself. You've known him one day. One. Still, it didn't matter. Something had shifted. By late afternoon, the men returned, dust-covered and tired. Violet stood at the stove stirring stew. When Colton stepped inside to wash up before heading to town for his belongings, she felt his presence before she heard him. "I'm heading out, Miss Inslee," he said. "Need to settle my room at the boarding house." "Will you be back for supper?" she asked, her voice too soft. "If that's all right." "It is." He nodded once, then hesitated. "And Violet?" She turned. "I haven't forgotten a moment of last night." Her breath caught, but before she could respond, Pedro called him outside. The moment broke. Just before supper, the Whitman wagon rolled into the yard. Violet's heart dropped when she saw Gerald step down, his face stiff and polite. She prayed her father or one of the men would appear, but no one did. She opened the door because some scraps of manners still held her together. "Violet," Gerald said, removing his hat, "may I come in?" "I'm preparing supper," she replied coolly. "Make it quick." He stepped inside, eyes searching her face like he expected to find something broken there. "I came to apologize," he said. "Things didn't happen the way I intended." Quote, "You intended to court Penelope while promising to court me?" His jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. Not at first. "And now, it doesn't matter," she said. "I wish you well." Gerald took a step closer. "I still care for you, Violet." "If things were different?" "They are not," she cut in. He let out a breath, frustrated. "I heard you left with that drifter. Chase. That was fast, even for you." The insult hit like ice water. "Mr. Chase was kind enough to escort me home after you left me stranded," she said firmly. "That is all." Gerald's smile turned cold. "Is it? Because there are rumors about Chase. Ugly ones, from Kansas. That he killed a man." Before she could reply, the door swung open and Colton stepped in, carrying a bag over his shoulder. He stopped short when he saw Gerald. "Evening," Colton said, calm but alert. Gerald looked him over like measuring a rival. "Chase." Violet moved quickly. "Mr. Chase, did you get everything handled in town?" "Yes, ma'am." His voice was steady, but his eyes never left Gerald. Gerald swallowed once, then looked at Violet. "Think about what I said," he murmured, and walked out. The tension he left behind felt thick enough to cut. Colton waited until the door closed. "You all right?" "Yes," she breathed. "Better than I expected." He nodded slowly, then added, "If anything he said troubles you, just ask." "Did you kill a man in Kansas?" she asked softly. Colton's jaw tightened. "Yes," he said simply. "He shot my trail boss in the shoulder during a robbery. I shot back. The law cleared me, but the dead man's brother didn't agree." Violet studied his face. There was no pride there, no boasting, only truth. "Thank you for telling me," she said. Before he could respond, the men returned, hungry and loud, and the moment passed. That night after supper, the ranch quieted. Charles sat in his chair by the fire, pipe in hand. Violet washed dishes. Colton dried without being asked. Charles watched them both with a thoughtful look. "Chase," Charles said finally, "you worked well today." "Thank you, sir. And you brought my daughter home safe last night. That counts for something." Quote. Violet's breath caught. Charles didn't give trust lightly. After a long moment, her father rose. "Branding starts early tomorrow. I'm turning in." Once he left the room, silence settled between Violet and Colton. She washed. He dried. Their hands brushed once, twice, each time sending a jolt through her. "You're strong," he said quietly. "Stronger than you know." Her hand paused in the dishwater. "You barely know me, Mr. Chase." "I know enough." His voice was soft but certain. "I know you hold your head high even when people try to break you. I know you care deeply. I know you're more capable than half the men in this county. And I know you're beautiful in a way no gossip can touch." Her breath trembled. No man had ever spoken to her like that. "Mr. Chase," she whispered, not trusting herself to say more. "Colton," he corrected gently. She looked into his blue eyes and saw something she wasn't ready to name, something she had hoped for but feared more than anything. The room felt small, warm, dangerous in a new way. He stepped back finally, clearing his throat. "Good night, Violet." "Good night, Colton." The next day, branding began at dawn. The ranch bustled with movement, shouts, rope, smoke from the branding fire. Violet worked beside the men, carrying water, moving calves, helping wherever needed. Colton proved himself quickly. He roped with precision, handled calves gently, and worked without tiring. Pedro watched him, then nodded with approval. Violet tried to act normal, but she felt Colton's presence every moment. During a break, she brought him a dipper of water. "You're good with a rope," she said. "Learned from Comanche hands," he replied. "They could rope a jackrabbit mid-run." She smiled and he smiled back, slow, warm, careful. "Most women I've known stay clear of branding day," he said. "I'm not most women." His eyes softened. "No, you certainly are not." Before she could respond, an urgent shout came from the road. Tom Barlow rode in hard, dust flying off his lathered horse. "Fire!" he yelled. "At the Collins place. Wind's driving it this way." Charles straightened immediately. "Pedro, Lucas, move the calves to the west pasture. Everyone else, with me." He turned to Colton. "You fought range fires before?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Ride with me." Then he faced Violet. "Wet down the house and outbuildings? Get everything ready in case it jumps the creek." "Yes, Father." Colton paused long enough to lean close. "Be careful. If the fire turns, go. Don't risk your life for buildings." "I know what to do," she said, but his worry warmed her chest. He gave her one last look, eyes fierce and full, then rode hard after her father. Hours passed like minutes. Violet soaked blankets, filled barrels, dragged valuables into the root cellar. Smoke drifted on the wind. Ash fell like gray snow. Fear clawed at her throat, but she worked as her father taught her, steady and fast. When the men finally returned, exhausted and soot-streaked, she ran outside. Her eyes found Colton first, alive, whole, steady. Her father dismounted with a groan. Fires contained at the creek line. Lost maybe 50 acres. Collins lost far more. Quote, Violet passed water to the men, but her eyes stayed on Colton, and the angry red burn across his forearm. "You're hurt," she said. "It's nothing." "It needs cleaning," she insisted, pulling him inside. In the kitchen she washed the burn, her hands gentle on his skin. He watched her the whole time, quiet, open, vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. "That boy in the barn," Violet said softly. "You saved him." Colton looked away. "He reminded me of my brother, wild and scared all at once." "You have a brother?" Quote, "Had." His voice roughened. "Lost him in the war." Her heart ached for him. "I'm sorry." He nodded once, long time ago. She finished bandaging the burn. Their hands brushed, his breath caught, so did hers. Before anything else could be said, her father entered, thanking Colton again and pulling him toward the porch for food and rest. Left alone in the warm kitchen, Violet pressed her hands to her chest. She had known Colton Chase for only 2 days. But she feared, maybe hoped, something had already begun that she could no longer stop. The morning after the fire brought a new kind of stillness to the ranch, the quiet kind that settles after danger has passed but left its mark. Violet rose early, but her mind was not on chores. It kept drifting to the look in Colton's eyes as she bandaged his arm, the softness in his voice when he spoke of his brother, the way he stepped between danger and anyone else without thinking twice. She tried to push those thoughts aside, but they clung to her like dust. By lunchtime, life on the ranch returned to its usual rhythm. Calves bawled. Men joked. The smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. Violet moved through her tasks, but every time Colton came near, she felt her pulse quicken. He spoke to her father often now, offering insight, asking questions, working with a steadiness that made Charles and Inslee watch him with growing approval. Violet noticed it every time, but she also noticed something else, how some folks in town had begun whispering. First about her humiliation, now about Colton's past. Gerald's warning still lingered in her mind. Rumors from Kansas. A killing. Trouble. She wanted to ignore all of it, but worry settled in her chest like a stone. 3 weeks passed. Spring pushed toward summer. The burned fields near the creek began to show green shoots. The ranch moved in a rhythm Colton slipped into with surprising ease. He became a familiar shape in Violet's days. Steady footsteps in the barn, the flash of sun on his hat as he rode the north pasture, the rumble of his voice during meals. The more she saw him, the harder it became to hide what she felt. One warm evening, Violet found herself on the porch, watching the sun fade behind the hills. The air smelled of pine and dust. The ranch hands had gone to town for their monthly night of recreation. Her father sat inside reading the paper. Colton stepped up onto the porch, quiet as always. "You're thoughtful tonight," he said, leaning on the rail across from her. "Just thinking." "About the work?" he asked gently. "No," she admitted. "About life. About how quickly everything seems to be changing." "Do you regret it?" he asked. His voice was careful, soft. "Do you regret me being here?" Quote. She turned toward him, surprised. "No, I never that." Her voice shook a little, his expression eased, but he kept his gaze steady on hers. "I've been running for a long time," he said, "from one place to the next. No real plans, no roots, just the next job, the next sunrise. But now," he paused, choosing his words, "now I find myself thinking about a tomorrow that looks different." "Different how?" Violet asked softly. His eyes didn't leave hers. "A tomorrow where I stay." Her breath caught. The meaning in his voice left no room for doubt. Before she could speak, he added, "I know it soon. And after what happened with Whitman, I don't expect you to trust easily. I'm not asking for anything now. Just," he hesitated, then finished quietly, "just permission to hope." The silence between them swelled, full and warm and terrifying. "Colton," she whispered, "I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I only know I don't want you far from it." His shoulders eased, his eyes softened. "That's enough." Quote, They stood like that for a moment, the porch bathed in fading gold, the air full of something new and unspoken. The next Saturday brought the charity social to raise funds for the families hurt by the fire. Violet stood before her mirror, smoothing the skirt of her best dress. Her mother's old pins held her dark hair in soft waves. She felt nervous, excited, alive. Her father knocked and stepped inside. "You look like your mother," he said softly. She had this same glow about her when she fell in love. Violet froze. "Father." He lifted a hand. "I see the way you look at him, daughter. And the way he looks at you. A man doesn't watch a woman like that unless she's tied to his heart." Her eyes stung. "I'm afraid." He nodded. "Of course you are. Love's a mighty risk, but some risks are meant to be taken." Before she could reply, the sound of hooves reached the window. Colton had arrived to escort her. At the social hall, the lanterns glowed warm. Music filled the air. People laughed, talked, and clapped as the band played lively tunes. Violet entered on Colton's arm, and the room grew quieter. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Penelope Davis stiffened. Gerald's face tightened. "Let them look." Colton bent toward Violet and murmured, "You all right?" "More than all right," she whispered. They danced. They talked. They laughed. And every so often, Violet caught someone whispering, "Is that the drifter? Is Violet and Inslee courting again? Didn't he kill a man?" But none of it mattered when she was in Colton's arms. During a break, he led her outside into the small garden behind the hall. Moonlight filtered through lilac bushes. The scent was sweet, the night quiet. "Violet," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart thudded. "I got a letter yesterday." From a friend in Dodge City. She held her breath. "The man who was hunting me, the brother of the man I killed, he died last month. Typhoid." Relief washed through Violet, surprising in its strength. "So the danger is gone?" she whispered. Colton nodded. "I'm not looking over my shoulder anymore. I'm free, truly free." She stepped closer. "Where will you go now?" He didn't hesitate. "Nowhere. Not if I have a choice. I want to stay. Here, with you if you'll let me." Her breath faltered. "Colton, I'm not asking for promises tonight. Just a beginning, a chance to court you proper, with your father's blessing." The world narrowed to him, his voice, his steadiness, the quiet hope in his eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Colton. I want that too." He closed his eyes as if letting go of a weight he'd carried too long. When he opened them, they held a warmth that reached straight through her. He did not kiss her, not here, not where others might see, but he lifted her hand and pressed a slow, gentle kiss to her knuckles. It was somehow more intimate than a kiss on the mouth. The ride home was quiet, peaceful, filled with soft glances and the promise of something new. When they reached the porch, Colton stepped down and helped her from the buggy. "Thank you," she whispered, "for tonight." "The pleasure was mine," he murmured. They stood only inches apart. No music, no crowd, no lanterns, just moonlight and a quiet promise. Violet lifted her face, a silent invitation. Colton's breath hitched. Then he cupped her face gently and kissed her, softly at first, as if afraid she might break. She leaned into him, and he deepened the kiss, still tender, still careful, but full of everything they had held back. When they finally parted, foreheads touching, Violet knew her life had changed forever. "Good night, Violet," he whispered, voice rough with emotion. "Good night, Colton." She watched him walk toward the barn, his figure strong in the moonlight. Only when he was gone did she slip inside, her heart full in a way she had never known before. That night, she drifted to sleep thinking of the future. His future. Their future. A future not decided by gossip or humiliation, but by courage and choice. She no longer feared what tomorrow might hold. Because tomorrow she knew exactly who she hoped would be standing beside her. And he had already asked for permission to hope. She had already given it.